What's going on, everybody? It's AG here. Today, we're going to be taking a look at my college football playoff contenders as of right now in the offseason. I've got this broken up in a tier list format to kind of make it a little more interesting. The tier list that I have, all right, so the tiers are borderline locks, probably in, maybe, sleepers, and then a G5 category. Join me down in the comment section. Let me know your college football playoff contenders at the moment. Now, if they're not on this list right now, I really don't think they have a shot at making the playoff. We'll start off in the borderline locks category. So these are teams that, as of right now, I don't see a path where they don't get in. I think any of these number of teams could lose multiple games and still get in. Definitely 2 games, maybe even more. Starting off Penn State, they've just got so much talent back. Drew Aller, that backfield, they're going to be good again in the Big Ten. Right now, they're probably definitely in my top four, probably my number one team in the country. These are my top 5 teams right now, by the way. Ohio State, no matter what Julian Sam looks like at quarterback, with Jeremiah Smith, with Caleb Downs, with Ryan Day, this team's going to be in the college football playoff. Pretty confident in that. Even if they lose to, let's say, for some reason they lose to Penn State and Michigan, I still think they're in. Next up, we've got Georgia. Now, even with all the talent they've lost in Carson Beck in the backfield, I think Gunnar Stockton's good enough to get this team to the playoff. I think obviously Kirby Smart's good enough to get this team to the playoff, no matter what kind of talent they have. Now, will there be a dip? Maybe, but I was impressed by Gunnar Stockton in the playoff game, even though stats weren't that great. They dropped a lot of balls. I thought he did pretty good. So I think Georgia will be back. Next up, we've got Texas. Hold on a second. Let me get a little sip here. Texas, though, similar to Ohio State, no matter how Arch Manning does, the rest of the roster is too talented, and I really don't see a way they don't make the playoff. Been to back-to-back semis, and we're a play away in both games from making the college football national championship. So Sarkisian's going to have talent on this roster. They have that. They've got probably, besides Penn State, I'd say the best running back room in the country. You got Arch Manning, some experience last year. Now, is he going to be Quinn Ewers? I don't know. Offers you a little bit different dual threat guy. Defense is going to be really good again. Probably a top 5 defense in the country. Got to replace your wideouts and tight ends, but they've got some nice portal pieces coming in. Texas will be back. And then we've got Clemson out of the ACC. I think they could lose a game and still be in as well. Kind of a tough schedule, but made the playoff last year, played with Texas a little bit, and almost that entire roster is back. This is probably Dabo's most talented team he's had since the Trevor Lawrence days. They've got like 6 to 8 guys being mock draft in the first round right now. So this roster is loaded with talent, especially in the ACC. So Clemson's going to be in. All right, so next up we've got the probablys. These are teams that I think are pretty good, and then you look at their schedule, that being combined with the talent they do have, they're probably going to be in because they're probably not going to have more than one loss at the end of the season, maybe even go undefeated. Starting off here, Michigan. Now, are they a top 10 team? That's debatable, but go look at their schedule for me, and this team's probably going to be in. At most, they're probably losing a game, but the defense, is going to be good. They're going to have a run game. And quarterback play is the question mark for them, but they were pretty solid last year with really bad quarterback play. There's no way their quarterback play is worse this year than it was last year with Alex Orji. They've got Bryce Underwood coming in, 5-star recruit at quarterback. You've also got, if that doesn't work out, you've got Mikey Keene at quarterback that could work out. He's won a lot of ball games, thrown for a lot of yards. Michigan, I think, will be in the playoff. Next up, South Carolina. Number one, they're talented anyway. Like, they were razor thin from missing the playoff last year. They had a pretty good argument. But they've got Lenora Sellers back, who I think will be the number one pick in the draft next year. He's a physical freak of nature. He can throw the ball. He can run. Probably the best player on the field at all times almost. And this is a really talented roster. I know they lost some guys like in the first couple rounds this year, but with what they have coming back, there's a lot of first and second round talent this year as well. And then with their schedule, they're probably not losing more than 1 or 2 games in there as well. So I think South Carolina's in. Next up, Miami. I know they lost the number one pick, Cam Ward, but you've got Carson Beck coming in at quarterback. He's proven he can win a lot of ball games. Is it going to be as flashy as Cam Ward? Probably not, but he's going to win games at Miami. He's going to get them over the hump, I think. And Mario Cristobal has had this team pretty consistent, and he's a pretty consistent head coach. I mean, back at Oregon, even he was pretty solid. So you know they're going to have talented roster, and Carson Beck, I think, gives them a little bit of an edge because you've got a guy that's been there before. You know, as good as Cam Ward was, he's not necessarily a winner from where he's been. So I think that gives them a little bit of an edge, an experienced quarterback that can kind of give you that edge in the ACC. So I got Miami. Miami probably in. Next up, we've got the maybes. So these are teams that I think might could be in, but they're not quite qualifying for the sleeper category because they're a little too much of a favorite. So these are teams maybe starting off Illinois. A lot of guys coming back. You know, they were probably one loss last year away from making the playoff anyway if they wouldn't have dropped that one to Minnesota. Illinois probably going to be this year's Indiana. They'll lose one game to Ohio State. They'll beat everybody else on their schedule. And the question is, does the playoff committee do what they did last year, or do they over course correct and then let in three lost teams from the SEC and the Big Ten? Oregon, I don't have them as a probably right now at Oregon because they lose so much from last year's roster. They got to replace the backfield. You got Dante Moore, quarterback, coming in from UCLA. You've got Mekhi Hughes coming in from Tulane. How is that backfield going to look? It's pretty much a G5 backfield going up against, you know, a power conference now. So they've got to take that step up, prove they can play in this conference. So how is that going to look? They also lose a ton of skill guys, receiver, tight end, and on defense, the defensive line. So Oregon's got a lot to replace. Now, Dan Lanning is pretty consistent. He's a good coach, so I think Oregon will be fine. But right now, I don't have them in the playoff, but I think it's possible. Florida is going to have a talented roster. Billy Napier closed the season really good. DJ Lagway is going to have them in every game. They've got a tough schedule, though, so they're realistically probably looking at like 3 losses, and they kind of tie in with the Illinois theory here. If the committee over course corrects and lets those teams in with multiple losses from the power conferences, then Florida is going to be the beneficiary there. But there's no way Florida makes it through the season unscathed because they just have such a tough schedule. But I think this roster is talented enough to get to the playoff. Alabama, Kalen DeBoer brings in some pieces and he's got like a full offseason to himself. But if he couldn't make the playoff last year with that roster they had, with the Nick Saban guys he had, how is he going to make it with replacing the guys they sent to the pros? I don't know. So Alabama is a big question mark for me this year. LSU kind of talented. Garrett Nussmeier puts up some good numbers, but does he win games? That's up for debate. They're going to put up really good offensive numbers, but can they win? Brian Kelly has done an okay job at LSU, I guess. You know, they're like 9-4-ish kind of every year. 10 wins maybe, but this is nowhere near his most talented roster he has had there. So I don't know. If this is the year, if it's going to happen for Brian Kelly at LSU, I think it is this year. But it's going to be tough. Notre Dame, they've got Jeremiah Love back at running back, who you could argue is their best player, but he really didn't play in the playoff anyway last year. And they were kind of led by Riley Leonard. So what can they do at quarterback to replace him? Riley Leonard in the playoff did it all, running it, passing it, whatever. Their defense was stacked. They lose a lot of guys from that defense, and we'll see. I'm a little skeptical on Notre Dame. I think it could be a bit of a letdown this year, so I'm not buying the Notre Dame hype this year, despite having Jeremiah Love. Louisville is another maybe for me. Jeff Brom has that team really consistent as a top 25 team. They actually had some pretty solid losses last year, like outside of the few teams being argued, you know, Ole Miss, Bama, South Carolina, BYU. I would say Louisville was like next as far as having an argument for the playoff. Got a pretty tough schedule, so I question if they'll get in, but we'll see. They've got a talented backfield in Miller Moss and Isaac Brown. SMU, I've got as a maybe right now. They lose so much from last year's playoff team besides their quarterback that it's going to be tough to replace. Running backs are gone. Receivers are gone. Defensive guys, whether it was lost to the draft, whether it was lost to the portal, besides Jennings at quarterback, it's almost a complete roster overhaul. Now, Rhett Lashley has won, I think, 11 games multiple years in a row now for SMU, so he can get it done, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be a new roster. All right, so now we've got pretty much all the Big 12 teams. They're all really close, so I really don't know who makes it out. I think 2 teams do get in this year, though, possibly, because there's a chance that multiple teams finish in the Big 12 with 1 loss because they don't play each other somehow. But Iowa State, a lot of guys back. Probably Matt Campbell's best team he has had. You've got Rocco Beck back at quarterback. You've got your backfield back and your top 2 running backs. Got to replace some receivers to the draft, but they do that in the portal. Iowa State will be good. Arizona State, They've got Sam Levitt back at quarterback, made a playoff appearance last year, but they lose their do-it-all back in Cam Scatabo. How do they look without him? It's going to be a different scheme, I think. Like, they're going to have to throw it up their big receiver some, but we'll see if it works. BYU uh, had a pretty good argument of being in the playoff last year, I thought. They've got their top 3 guys back on offense, top 2 guys back on defense. I think BYU is in the playoff this year. Kansas State, really talented roster. Avery Johnson, multiple year starter at quarterback now, uh, can win you games by himself. I think this is Chris Kleiman's best team he's had at Kansas State, so we'll see what happens there. But right now, I've got Kansas State, BYU, and Iowa State all with probably one loss at the end of the year. So we'll see what happens there if multiple get in. Texas Tech, really talented roster, bringing in, I think, the number 2 portal class overall. So a lot of talent coming in. They've got their quarterback, Baron Morton, back. If Joey McGuire is going to do it, this is probably the year. I thought they were going to be pretty good last year, but I think they were a year ahead of schedule. So I think Tech will be definitely a player in the playoff race. All right, so next up we've got sleepers. These are teams that I think are talented enough. Like, I have them around my top 25, but they're not quite like a top 5 team in their conference favorite wise. So these are sleepers that I think have a favorable enough schedule and have enough talent that they might could make things interesting and kind of sneaking in that last 12, 11 spot. First off, USC, their quarterback that is replacing Miller Moss, got some run last year, looked pretty good. And you look at their schedule last year under Lincoln Riley, didn't really have any bad losses. I think their only game that was 7+ was against Notre Dame, which made the national championship. So I think Lincoln Riley, given time, is going to get this thing turned around. And I think this is the year it happens. I've got USC pretty high. I'm pretty high on them. Nebraska, Dylan Raiola back at quarterback. Now, the real reason they're here is Matt Rule. Every time he has been a head coach at somewhere in the college ranks, in the third year is when it always picks up for him. This is his third year. Whether it was at Baylor, whether it was at Temple, that's when they start turning it around and kind of get the double-digit wins. So I think that's going to happen in Nebraska this year. They have a favorable enough schedule. They might can make things interesting in the Big Ten. All right, moving on to the SEC, Vanderbilt. You've got their quarterback back again, Diego Pavia. They kind of snuck up on some teams last year, Alabama in particular, and their roster is improved from last year. I'm not saying they're going to go and win the SEC, but I think they could dip some teams and make things interesting to where we get to playoff time. Vanderbilt has 3 losses against good teams in the SEC. Do they have an argument to get in over a 1-loss Big 12 team, a 1-loss ACC team? Possibly. Arkansas, now their schedule is pretty tough, so I don't know if they're going to be able to get in, but this is a talented roster. I like what they've put together here. Taylor Green at quarterback is dual threat enough and good enough that I think he can win you a ball game by himself. I think he'll get some NFL draft buzz after this year, but Arkansas, probably a top 30 roster in the country, so they're good enough to I think, beat some teams in the SEC. I'll move on to the ACC here. Georgia Tech, Haynes King is at quarterback. He's won a lot of ball games there. Dual threat guy, came from A&M, and last year they even gave Georgia a run for their money. I've got them, I think, at 2 losses right now. So I think they'll be in that top 15 range by the end of the year. Will they get in? I don't know. It depends on if they upset a team or not. But I think they're definitely a top 20 team this year by the end of the year. NC State, I thought they'd be a little better last year. Dave Doran's done a good job at head coach there and wins a lot of ball games. But it didn't really work out, had a lot of injuries, but they got CJ Bailey some run at quarterback, and that really helped them out, I think, for the future for this year. And they've got a okay enough schedule. I think they could sneak into the ACC championship and possibly win it. Then in the Big 12, I've got Baylor. They've got a favorable schedule. They've got their backfield back, Sawyer Robertson. They've got their top 2 running backs back as well. I think Baylor could sneak up on one of these teams in the Big 12 and kind of be that team that's kind of lurking at the end of the year when we're talking about all the really good teams that. But then you look at the Big 12 standings, and Baylor's sitting right there. All right, so I'm moving on to the G5. I've got a few teams here because right now, I mean, it's kind of a toss-up. Looking at all these teams' schedules, there's really not anybody I don't think that's going to go undefeated because they all play a pretty solid Power 5 opponent or Power 4 opponent at the beginning of the year. Boise State, lose Ashton Jeanty, but they've got a lot of other pieces back. Can they make a run again? UNLV, bringing a really good portal class, Dan Mullen coming over. They're going to be kind of interesting. USF, they've got their quarterback back, Byron Brown, which is a pretty solid G5 quarterback that can kind of win you some ball games and give an interesting dual threat look. I think they'll be good. Navy, they've got a lot of their guys back. Their quarterback, their top two running backs, they should be pretty interesting. Had a good record last year. Miami of Ohio is actually who I have in right now. They've got Daquan Finn coming over from Baylor, formerly at Toledo. If you remember a couple years ago when Toledo was really good, he was their quarterback there. Can run the ball, can pass the ball. He's going to win Miami of Ohio a lot of games this year, and they've won a lot of games without him anyway. You have an upgrade there. I think Miami of Ohio will be interesting. Ohio won a lot of ball games in the last couple of years. They have a pretty interesting backfield. Louisiana, good record last year. I think they went 10-3. Got a lot of pieces coming back. Colorado State, their quarterback is back. I think they had 8 wins last year. Might could sneak up on some teams and beat some people. James Madison, kind of a place that has been talked about a lot lately, mainly because Curt Cignetti came from there. But James Madison, team to keep an eye on. And then Memphis, I thought they were better last year, admittedly so, but I think everybody else is kind of taking a step back. So Memphis is kind of a team to keep an eye on. But those are my current college football playoff contenders. I'll try to update this as we get onto the season, and then kind of during the season, I'll update every few weeks. So if that sounds like you're something you might be interested in, hit that subscribe button if you're not already. But let me know your college football playoff contenders down in the comment section. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button.